During this set of lessons, we're going to talk about how to deploy a sample application across 3 distinct development environments or deployment environments. During this set of lessons, we're going to talk about how to deploy a sample application over 3 distinct deployment environments. The first environment is development, and development is typically the place where source code that's been checked in by a developer is checked out into a common execution environments that all developers can use. So for example, if a developer makes some back-end code to a web application, he or she will check in that back-end code and it will be deployed into a development environment so that the front-end developers can take advantage of that in unison, as opposed to working on their local environment or their local desktop. The staging environment is where code is converted into a deployable artifact, and then tests, typically functional tests or performance tests, are run against that deployment artifact. So in most modern cases now, we're seeing a lot of containers used. So what that means is that when something goes to a staging environment, the source code will be converted into a container. The container will be put in a container runtime environment like Docker, and then automated testing will be performed against that container, which is what we're going to do in later lessons in part 2. And then part 3, which is master, is the master branch, means that code that's just about ready to go into production is deployed into a deployment runway in which the environment almost or comes really close to emulating a production runtime environment. So for example, while the staging environment might run containers in a container build machine or container build server, in a master environment, what will happen is all those deployment artifacts will go out into a cloud native format, and the tests will be run against a cloud instance, almost staging or even in an A/B testing framework, where not the degree of intensive testing will take place, but more user acceptance testing and some performance testing. The important thing to understand is that there's no such thing as one deployment environment anymore. I mean, some companies have it, but a lot of companies don't. Is that there are distinct deployment environments, and code will go to that deployment environment depending on some factors. And a typical factor is what branch is the code in a Git repository. So for example, if code's in a development branch, it'll go to a development runway. If it's escalated to a staging branch, it'll go to a staging runway. And then finally, when it gets to the master branch, that code will go into a user acceptance testing or a runway, which is almost or is a cloud environment. So the important thing to understand again is that different branches will have different deployment environments.